Lenny, are you going to be a good co-host? Good boy.
Getting on a lunchtime walk, reinvigorating yourself. How I like to stay productive in the afternoons.
Quite sunny here in London today. Got my sunglasses on for the first time in 2021, which is exciting.
All right, welcome back to everyone out there in the universe. I'm Paul Seda. Welcome to the Unily Podcast. The really good news is I was sitting on the couch last night, watching music, reinforcing my own self-loathing. I'm a big Radiohead fan. But I'm a creep. And going through the show notes in preparation, and I had a brainstorm that we need to bring in someone to the podcast. Casey Farr is joining us, who's a member of the Unily marketing team, because we're going to be talking about internal communications and writing. So if you're a writer or you're responsible for editorial content, this is a podcast for you. And don't take it personal that I was listening to Creep by Radiohead when I came up with this.
I'm struggling not to.
No, you've called me a creep on multiple occasions. So perhaps it's fitting that you would join us. But no, thank you for joining us, Casey. We went, again, literally this morning early, decided, well, Casey's got to be on it now. And we had to get her equipment to her via Uber. That's how important she is to everything. So emergency Uber was sent with her gear so that she could join us. And she's also joined by Lenny the dog. So we got two for the price of one. Awesome. So on that note, I want to ask everyone, how has your week been so far? Casey, you're new to the podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, it's been a good week actually, and it's been a probably an appropriate week to be tackling this topic because we just did a panel event yesterday for internal comms in 2021. So I feel that I should be appropriately prepped to talk about the topic today. So yeah, it's been a really busy week. Some really exciting things going on in the marketing department, and hopefully I can share some of those insights with you today.
Awesome. Matt, you were on the internal comms webinar, am I right? Or am I totally off base on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough to be hosting the internal comms panel. And we had some really great speakers. Session went really well, so I certainly learned a lot from that session. It was a really good one, great turnout, lots of engagement.
And you gave a plug to the video podcast /blog, which we appreciate. We're desperate for plugs.
Of course.
So please, in your private life, in your personal life, in your business life, say everything you possibly can about this podcast, because they're going to pull us off if we don't get more viewers.
Hey man,
I'm joking.
I'm trying to get you up to your 12th subscriber. So
yeah, no, number 12 would be huge for us. Huge. So
no
that's
doubt.
great to hear. Kaz, how about you? How was your week?
It was good. I'd say it was above average for lockdown. We've had some announcements of things starting to ease here, so having a slightly more positive outlook. But yeah, I'd say above average makes it measurable. So next time you ask me, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, anytime there's an ease on restrictions in terms of movement, that's got to be nice. It's been beautiful here in New Jersey, just outside New York City, for the past couple days, and I am thoroughly enjoying some sunlight and being able to walk around the block even. So I hear you on that. And finally, Caitlin, how was your week?
It was good. Yeah, it was another fast week. I can't believe how fast the year's going already. But yeah, no, I'm crying less and things are getting sunnier. Just kidding. No, it was a really great week, actually. Lots of good things happening. And yeah, I'm always looking forward to Fridays now for our podcast.
Awesome. So the people watching this don't know it's Friday, so way to
Oh,
ruin
yeah,
the mystique
yeah.
of it.
Right.
You did it.
Any day,
You ended.
right?
No, that's fine. So on that note, I want to hop into the topic. We're talking about, well, we titled it Consumer Grade Internal Comms, right? And creating consumer grade internal comms. But I want to caveat that and make sure people understand that what we're really talking about is not the quality, because actually I think the quality of both internal and external is very high these days relative to maybe where it was a number of years ago. What we're talking about are maybe strategies that external marketing has perhaps influenced on the internal side. And maybe we can talk about what's happening with external marketing and strategies, and how people like Casey write, and because we've seen that stuff sort of leak into the workplace. The biggest case in point is how many of our customers talk about rich media, right? They don't just want text on paper. They want rich media. So we added video and audio to our platform because we were getting that constantly. And that is a direct result of rich media on the consumer facing side, really landing so well with people. So on that note, I'm actually curious, because she is here for the first time, and I love throwing people under the bus. You have a very interesting role here at Unily. I'm a big fan of our marketing team. You guys are outstanding. I felt for a long time it's been one of the things that's differentiated us. But I kind of want to understand your role, and then maybe you talk about like what are some of the things that have evolved, even at your time at Unily, that you may have come in doing one thing and changed to another.
Yeah, sure. Well, my role at Unily, I'm comms manager, so I really look after any kind of written or now kind of non-written communications that we put out. But I think what's probably changed over the time, or what we really are focused on at the moment, is from what I find people want from communications is quick, digestible insights. They want to know, why am I reading this? Why is this valuable to me? And what are the highlight top points? So where in the past you might have seen a lot of long form content that you would really need to dig into and spend some time reading, a lot of the comms that we produce now tries to kind of wrap that up into bite-sized updates that are really digestible for people. And then off the back of that, once we've kind of piqued people's interest with those bite-sized points, then they can then go on to maybe deep dive into some kind of our bigger guide content or a longer form blog. So I think one of the things that it's not necessarily changed, but it's definitely become a big part of our strategy, is making information very quick to digest. And whether that's doing it in written form by picking out kind of the key highlights of a big piece of text, or whether that's using things like video, imagery to convey those messages. I think that's something that we're seeing a lot more in internal comms and external comms, and that's something that we're really focused on doing.
Yeah, and I want to throw to Matt to say, have you like Casey's alluding to, and I think we all already know the answer to, is have you seen that trend extend from external marketing and communications to internal? Are customers going in that way with shorter snippets based on what you've seen? And then again, you and Kaz are on the product marketing team. How do you enable that sort of thing from a product perspective?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of really good questions. Actually, it's interesting in terms of the short form content. Actually, I guess backtrack just a tiny bit. One of the things that we do, as part of the product team, is we interview customers to help ensure that what we're building for internal communicators is really serving their use cases and meeting their needs. That's actually, one of the really, really cool parts of my job, is that I don't design in isolation. I get to work with a team of peers like Kaz and like other people like Katie Johnson, for instance. And we get to design technology collaboratively, but more
Shout
than
out
that,
Katie.
Yeah, shout out Katie. I know, I've
that.
told her. Yeah, I said to her she's got to get on the podcast, and you guys have to try and rope her in. I really think she should do one too. But beyond that, I get to work with these really talented internal people, which helps to, come out with the best possible outcome. But more than that, we work with the customers. And recently, I was interviewing an internal comms manager working for a big travel and tourism brand, and they were talking about how the content they produce now is designed to be read in 30 seconds. So if they're reading the stories, because they have this really keen awareness that actually a lot of people are very time poor, you know, and this, I guess, you know, for those of you following the podcast trends and topics, you know, we talked about productivity last week and, you know, measuring time and things like that. But I think there's a general feeling that people are time poor, and if you're expecting them to read these stories, you know, these cultural snippets, or, you know, even get these kind of insights or these kind of educational pieces, we really need to make sure that they're designed to be consumed by, you know, everyone in the shortest amount of time possible, getting straight to the meat of it and kind of delivering those answers. So yes, I've seen customers, our customers at least, and internal communicators expressing the need to deliver short bite-sized content. And, you know, in terms of how we, you know, accommodate that in technology or in the solutions we build, we actually interview customers before we build anything to make sure that what we're going to build is fit for purpose. You know, the offline reading piece that we did the other day, you know, we kind of released a feature for taking your communications offline with you. And one of the things that one of our clients said is, well, you know, just taking one or two bits isn't as useful as being able to take lots of short snippets with you at once. So we were able to engineer the solution to support that.
Sure. And Caitlin, I'm wondering, are there any cues you hear from customers in the sales process that let you know that rapid fire comms is high on their priority list? The one that I hear is, I need publishing to be quick. I need it to be simple. Presumably because they want to push it out faster. I don't know if you've heard hear anything like that regularly or something similar. Yeah,
I mean, the content publishing experience that people have available for their content internal communications teams is critical. Like, it has to be easy to use. It has to be, you have to push things out quickly. You have to be able to change things, edit things quickly. Even the constant use case that comes up is if we need to do a takeover because something really important is happening, or campaign content across all the different mediums and platforms available to people that they're using. Like, how can we do that quickly and easily? And then I think the other thing that's really important that comes up all the time is, how can we measure the success of it? So we want to gauge, like, the tone that we're using with people. Is it being well received? Are we publishing things enough? Or so are we over communicating, under communicating? How do people want to consume it? Speaking to what Matt was talking about, are they reading bite-sized pieces of information offline, or they prefer to see things in short, quick bite videos or articles? How long are they spending on content? So as important as the ease of use of the actual content creation experience is, the way to measure the success of it is also equally important.
And Kaz, when you're with product now, but when you were a consultant, what were some of the strategies you told customers to, use when they wanted to ensure that they were either writing consumable content? Because that's how I think about it, right? Mm-hmm. Is it consumable? Because one of my favorite jokes is, how do you eat an elephant, right? Like, one bite at a time. I know it's a dad joke. I get that. But it's kind of telling, right? Because
is that a joke, or is it like
it's an expression? You know what, Caitlin? You're very critical of me sometimes, and I don't know. You're right. It's an expression. I use it as a joke because I'm not very funny. But we don't want to feed elephants to our employees, right? The same way we don't want to feed elephants to our prospective customer. So, like, what are some things that ring bells in terms of recommendations you've seen or strategies you implemented when you were on the consulting side?
Yeah, so I think that, like, it's kind of different for every client, but one thing I've tried to do, especially when working with clients, is tune into the outside trends that are going on, and ultimately, like, if you look at some of the external communications and the marketing trends and things like that happen, I've got 3 younger siblings who are quite a bit younger than me, so I try to tune into the trends that they're looking at, and then try and interpret that to see how I can then kind of repackage that and use that with clients to boost up their communications. And one thing is exactly about that kind of snippet bite-size type of communications. And I think one particular conversation I had that sticks in my head was actually someone that works in marketing called Amber Saville, and a couple of years ago,
Amber.
Shout out to Amber. Lots of shout outs in this episode, yeah. And a couple of years ago when we first met, I remember distinctly having a conversation where she said to me, I'm really struggling to watch longer form films and TV series because my attention span is all kind of on that YouTube, that 30-minute, 40-minute, 50-minute type content that I'm engaging in. And I thought to myself, actually, yeah, that's kind of true. I kind of see myself doing that same thing. And then not too long ago, maybe 6 months ago, we had a very similar conversation where it was, I'm really struggling to watch YouTube content because my mind is now adjusted to things like TikTok, where you've got really short form video, which are, 10, 15 seconds. So I think I agree with that point based on the short form content and bite-sized content, putting that out there. So when it comes to clients, I think that one of the trends we've seen, and we have invested in this from the product as well, is that whole video side of things. So we recently put out a release of the ability to upload video and do it within social capabilities, for example. So if I'm speaking to a client and their question is, okay, how do we get our users to engage with our content? And how do we get the platform adopted, things like this, then my answer would be try to think of less traditional out there ways of engaging people, which might include some short form videos created by leadership, for example, right, or taking snippets from people in the business and putting that on social. And we've seen that work internally at Unily as well. Yeah. We recently had some goodie bags sent out to employees as a kind of pick me up during lockdown. And I think one of the most popular pieces of content that did well was one by Alex Taylor. Another shout out there.
Shout out, Alex.
The unboxing.
The unboxing.
Famous unboxing.
The infamous unboxing video. Go ahead, Kaz.
So see, everyone knows it, right?
That's right.
So none of us work directly with Alex, but everyone knows that video because he did this kind of unboxing video where he opened his goodie bag and he spoke through every element of the goodie bag. And everyone loved it, and it just got so much reaction. And it goes to show that sort of more visual, but also short form content really is powerful.
Yeah, and I'll talk. The great thing about that is that wasn't planned. The comms team, the marketing team didn't do it. That was spontaneous, and it was so darn entertaining. First of all, Alex is really funny. Okay. Second of all, I didn't recognize most of the candies that were in that bag because the UK has some weird stuff.
We'd say sweets, not candies.
Sweets, see? There you go. But again, that was like short form video that was spontaneous and entertaining. And a lot of people are like, well, that's superfluous. Well, is it? Because number one, Alex built his brand internally, not only as a joker, but someone who's entertaining and someone that you kind of want to talk to, right? So as an employee. And by the way, I just criticized Caitlin yesterday about
I was just going to call that out. Yesterday, I got made fun of for talking about my personal brand because I use that term and
I bullied you.
People think it's cheesy. I was just about to call you out. Good job.
If I'm
bullying yourself before being bullied.
That's right. And it was like, again, it drew eyes to the platform because everyone's like, did you see what Alex did? And then I was like, no, wait, I got to check. Right. So even though it wasn't planned, it was short form, it was entertaining. And that, those types of things can give maybe comms people ideas about what they can do differently. Short form, not super formal. I mean, look at the DIY nature of this video podcast blog, right? Like it's literally DIY. Like we're making it up as we go along.
Speak for yourself. I'm highly polished over here.
No, Matt, you're the consummate professional.
And I got my glam team.
Team of glam.
That I'm trying to expense.
That's right. That's what this was all about for Caitlin, was a way to get her hair and makeup done and charge it back to the company. But we're going further and not only pushing this internally, we're pushing it externally, which I think is a sea change. I think that's a sea change in the way this stuff is produced and exposed. It's not going to be it's like punk rock content, right? Like if you think of that, like that, you know what? I'm trademarking that. I'm running with it if no one else has. But it's punk rock DIY kind of do it at the seat of your pants. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to Casey because I want a little bit of a day or a week in the life of what it's like to work for the marketing team at Unily and the communications, right? Because you do editorial. You've been kind of the person to write some of the stuff I've done internally at times, which I'm really grateful for, by the way. But I'm curious, what are some of the things that you're engaged on week by week, the types of channels you're going through? Because I'm really interested in that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I try to explain to the team what our role is and how we should be spending our time is I try to think of us as internal journalists. So a lot of the stuff that we write about is quite technical. It's very, it requires a lot of industry knowledge. It requires like a real understanding of how the challenges our personas face. And then it requires us to go away and find insights that could help them solve those challenges. So a lot of our week is actually spent around the company in different business departments, talking to people, keeping in tune with kind of what the zeitgeist at the moment, what people are talking about, what kind of seems to be, what are the key topics that keep coming up in all of our conversations, collect up that information and then deliver it out on whatever channel we think is most appropriate to hit to engage that persona. But it's really all about bringing value. We're really focused on, just really trying to dig deep into the topics that we know our personas care about and spending our time asking those questions to the people that we have in the business that, like you guys, that are full of knowledge so that we can then disseminate that back out. Yeah,
they used to call that like content marketing in the sense that you're not just producing content, right? So it's a bit of a misnomer. It needs to be more descriptive, right? But the idea is that the stuff you're producing gives people some value. It's educational is the big one, right? Like, I'm a big proponent of this because, frankly, in my role and I think Caitlin's role, we have to go out and actually Kaz and Matt too. We have to do a lot of investigation of what's going on in the marketplace. What are the trends? And we rely on content marketers like Casey, who are putting together these guides and stuff to kind of inform us. In fact, like Matt, what are some of the and maybe we shouldn't name names about the blogs and the people you go to, but like, how do you kind of find stuff when you're doing research? I imagine what I'm saying is somewhat true, at least in terms of, using that publicly accessible content to kind of learn about the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the sheer volume of content that's available nowadays is pretty staggering. I actually think that the hardest task isn't necessarily, finding content to inform you on a given topic, but it's about, finding, trusted sources and finding channels, I guess, which speak to you and deliver the kind of information you're looking for in a way that really fits your own kind of way of operating. So, I quite like consuming short, concise kind of video content, as I'm sure a lot of people do. So I think, that's why I was really interested in joining the podcast with you guys from time to time. I think it's a really great way to deliver interesting and useful messaging, based upon, people's experiences and what they've got to share. But, there's various, we talked about this before as well, but it's like everyone learns or everyone consumes in different ways, where I maybe prefer to sit down and watch short video content. There'll be other people who, for instance, start their day reading a couple of short form articles over breakfast. Right. And I think, that's why the variety of different types and formats of content that get delivered is, almost as important as the content itself, catering for all the different audiences. I know, for example, Casey, we've partnered together on things like, feature launches for our product, right, for our platform. A new feature rolls out, and in the same, as part of the same piece of messaging, we'll do a short article, and you'll work with the team to kind of put together a short bite-sized video. So you'll have explained the salient points of what this feature is, what you can expect, what your communication team are going to get out of it. But at the same time, Casey's partnering with other people in her comms team to produce video content, which gives you the same journey, but in a different, a different way of digesting it. So, we already kind of tailor our messaging in that way. And, that's why for me, it's about finding the format that fits best for you, or fits best for an audience, just because there's so much content that's so readily available nowadays.
Kaz, what are some of the channels that you like to consume content from? And specifically for how it educates you and supports you in your role. We all know the usual suspects for recreational kind of consumption of content, right? The Netflixes of the world and whatnot. But what Casey's trying to doing is inform people, right? So they can make educated decisions. What are some of the channels you rely on for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I try to do a bit of a mix. There's part of me, as I said last week, I can be a bit of a data geek, and there is a lot of information out there. So sometimes I try to chase back to the original source to find the original data without the spin on it, to help make up my mind about something. Especially when it comes to our field as well. One thing we do internally, actually, most of the people on this call are quite involved in the process, is we run a masterclass series where we talk about in-depth topics related to employee engagement or digital workplaces or digital HQs, and being able to create that content with people like Casey is something you want to make sure you get right, because you speak to we go to different cities, so many different locations, different types of topics, and you want to make sure that content is cutting edge stuff, is well researched, and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of noise out there, so it's really good. You chase back to kind of original sources to get the core information, and then I worked quite closely with Casey on the culture session that we're delivering this year, and the way I think that worked quite well was that we had our sources and we had our opinions, and then we came together and we kind of debated and sometimes challenged and argued, and that's kind of how we got to what our opinion was playing devil's advocate a little bit. We do that a lot internally. Matt and I do it as well. Very much so. Well, maybe too much so.
That's why everyone gets angry at you both.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
Of course.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So sorry, yeah. So I was just going to say, getting the data and then debating it, but also, yeah, as you say, getting different channels, and also in our sort of role where you have to be educating people on what the right thing to do with a product is, for example, or making right decisions. It's really important you get your fair share of practical experience as well. So we try and continually talk to clients. I'm always a bit, when it comes to technology, I always try and observe my family members and my friends to see what behaviors they do. So I've got a good mix of the information, the read up, the data, plus what I'm observing and making comment on.
So maybe Caitlin and I are a little bit different, because I think in our jobs we're actually, and Kate, I won't speak for you because I'm actually curious about this. I want to know what channels you're going to learn. We have to get very in the weeds and the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of technology and concepts around technology. Working for a software company, one of the funny things about it is you can only avoid the nuts and bolts for so long. Eventually the rubber's going to hit the road, and you really have to understand concepts and things like that. And I find there's certain vendors out there, I won't name them yet, I'll probably share after Caitlin speaks. There's certain vendors in the marketplace who put out really high quality content. So I'm curious, Caitlin, what have you put out that works for you and helps you stay informed and learn things?
Yeah, actually, I'll try not to ramble because I have a lot of thoughts on that. But I am most or best informed, I should say, by the internal conversations going on. So we have a very, I'll say communicative culture, I think, internally at our company. And so internal social threads, is where I'm consuming or kind of learning a lot and relying on a lot. Almost like you could think about it as microblogging, where someone might share something on a highly visible social channel.
Yeah.
So like, while it's important to me to get internal communications coming from like leadership about process updates, QBRs, team wins, client wins, things like that, the things that are helping me do my job best are where I'm like focusing from a channel perspective and where I'm consuming content the most. Right. And I think that's, it just made me think of it when I said I'll try not to ramble, like having conversations with customers about content strategy, internal communication strategies. And like, you know, we're not putting out enough. We don't think people want to hear more from us. We don't have time to do it. How do we extend or create a strategy where we're putting out more content that's relevant to people? And then you start thinking about the concept of extending, you know, blogging to people internally, or the micro blogging, like I mentioned, with the like social posts and stuff, or like mass kind of extended governance or looser governance on everybody having a voice and creating content. And then there's like we have that funny story of the concerns around that, where it's like, well, what if people don't follow policy? Like where we're giving them the voice, but then they're not following internal site policy. And it's like, well, then they have the consequence that you're fired.
Right.
Like, that's
and maybe it's a bad policy.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is also with internal communications, like your name is going to be attached to everything. There's audit trails on everything. I mean, like everywhere else on the internet too, and not just intranets. But so people are held accountable to what they're putting out in the world. And once you put it on the internet or the intranet, it's in ink. So, you know, I mean, that's kind of off topic of what you asked for, but I think when I'm hearing from like-minded peers, that's a lot of the times most meaningful to me. I think the internal comms about like company updates and things like that, super important. But I'm focusing most of my time through the day on the like peer content that's being pushed out.
That's a really fair point, because one of the trends that we've seen, and it's been ongoing for a number of years, but I think people are finally starting to get, this has legs, this is going to last, is the information sharing and the communication isn't always necessarily going to be top down. You know, there's a little bit of that bubbling up, like you're saying, like you're putting it out into the universe. Hey, has anyone seen this? Have you done that? And then there's all this information that's gleaned from people participating in a conversation. I don't think that's all that different from what external marketers are doing. I mean, Casey, we have a social strategy, right? Like what's kind of in your mind the philosophy around that, and our social strategy as it relates externally? And by the way, I believe you're muted, so be very careful before you speak.
I'm not muted. I don't know what you mean. Yes, sorry. I had a really good point to make that I've now forgotten because of this muting debacle.
God, Paul.
I
ruin everything. I'm sorry.
Okay, what were you saying? What I was thinking was actually, as you were talking about kind of the user-generated content type thing, which then relates back to social. I think something we've seen in consumer trends and in the external outside of workspace is, and I hear it again and again, everybody's become a journalist, everybody's become a writer. Like, it's so easy for us to put our own comms out and have a voice in the world, whatever topic it might be, whatever, you know, arena it might be. And that content is normally, I find, a lot more engaging than the top-down content that you might get. So I find it a lot more interesting to be reading things on Medium or something like that, where there's a lot of user-generated content and it's coming from an array of sources. It's something that, you know, the article is something that somebody is passionate about. That's why they've written it. It's something that they're either well educated on or they've got a real passion for, and you can feel that in the writing of it. So I think that's like an overall trend that then we see infiltrate comms as a whole. So that kind of personality and that sense of like the voice of the writer then starts to come through into all the comms that we see in consumer, and then will probably filter down into internal comms as well. So to actually answer your question, which that didn't,
it was good though. It was good. Keep going. Yeah.
What we try to do on social is really leverage a lot of that. Like, our audience are experts in their own field, so whenever we're posting anything out, we want feedback from the people that we're engaging with. We want to sometimes write controversial things that we know people are going to have an opinion on and want to engage with. So we're always really looking to create that engagement, and LinkedIn is a great place to do that for us. You know, our audience is B2B, so you know, that's a great place for us to kind of build that engagement and kind of build a community, which is essentially what we're trying to do. We want a community, an established audience that are interested in our topic, want to feed into the themes that we're talking about. And so, yeah, that's what we're trying to do with social, and we're trying to kind of get our message out there in as many mediums as we can. Something I was thinking about earlier when you were speaking was it's all about cutting through the noise. Like, the volume of communications is basically the biggest challenge for internal and external communicators. You're always looking for ways to cut through the noise. And one way of doing that is just to be everywhere. Have in-person events, have virtual events, be all over social, have a great website, do blogs, work with other people, other partners, do podcasts like this, so that you have as many possible touch points to engage your audience as possible. So you're always present, and whenever your audience is ready to tap into that, you're there.
Yeah. Caitlin, ask
I
your
had
question.
I was laughing
Caitlin
because I was
is
like
chomping
asking
at the
permission.
bit. Yep. Chomping
I'm
at the
about to ask a
bit.
very controversial. No, I'm just kidding. No, I have a question for Casey, because I was thinking a lot as we're talking about this, how like the journey you go through with companies from a communications perspective, because the tone of voice I think that you have for external comms, so how you speak to your customers, your prospects on social media, and then the tone of voice you have internally sometimes can be very different. And a lot of companies, especially really large ones, like they'll have internal comms, executive comms, external comms, corp comms. And so there can be this variance of tone of voice. But what's interesting is when I joined Unily, I actually joined, and I think I've told our marketing team this before, but I joined because I was so impressed with our external marketing and communications. And I was like, this is a cool company. They have their stuff together. Like, this is big time. So I was like, you know, I was confident in that. Whereas, so that external website
You never
presence,
said that before.
I did. I remember actually when I first met you, and I was like, I'm going to tell our CMO, like, but I was being genuine, because I was like, this is great. And then I expected that for the internal communication stuff too. And I think that sometimes that happens at a lot of companies. There's a challenge of the quality of the internal comms. You want to match it to the external comms, and it's not quite there. And so I wonder, like, if you have a thought on, like, is that important? To match those tones, and like maybe how can internal comms match those, like the consumer experiences? And maybe we've been talking about this the whole time, and I
think it's a good question. You stole my thunder, actually, because I was going to ask. Wait, sorry. I was actually going to ask, like, is there a different voice to external communications? And is there a different voice when it comes to external and internal, right? And if so, is it appropriate? Do we need to have different voices?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I actually think that Unily were really kind of actually at the forefront of a movement that hadn't really started yet, because I think we are really lucky in that our external voice is very personable. It's supposed to be human. It's supposed to be something that people resonate with and interact with. So our style of external communications is not corporate. It's not staid and kind of very highly polished. It's supposed to be like you're talking to a friend, a helpful friend that's going to help you solve your problems. So we're really lucky in that that's always been our style. So it means that I barely have to change my tone of voice. I have to think about I'm talking to a different person with different needs, but I can keep my tone of my human personality, my tone of voice kind of across all comms. And I think that's something that we're actually starting to see a lot of brands doing, is have a more human tone externally. And then we're starting to see that internally, especially now with the move to remote work, internal comms teams. I'm hearing again and again this focus on how can we make our communications human in a digital world? How can we make sure that our personality is coming through when we're communicating purely by by text, by words. So yeah, I think we're incredibly lucky to be in a position where our external comms is already like that, and I think our internal comms is like that too. So
I think,
yeah, does that answer your question?
But and Matt, I was actually going to throw to you. Do you think do you think that's always appropriate though? Is it always appropriate to speak with that? Because I can tell you, Casey is highly inappropriate when I speak. With and
yes,
no,
I stole your thunder there.
yeah,
no.
But Matt, like, because you just spoke about this on the webinar, in effect, right? Like,
yeah.
But is that always appropriate? And maybe there isn't an answer, but I'm curious what you think.
No, I think actually, I think the really good thing that like Casey drew out there as well, and something that both myself and Casey have been looking at and discussing a lot is the massive amount of change that's going on in the field, specifically of internal communications. I actually think when we talk about when we've been talking about communications today, and we've talked a lot about external voice and kind of marketing personas, or even just the voice of our brand, and Casey of course has a lot of expertise and kind of helped shape that and make sure that it's really delivered as part of each piece of content she produces. I think internal comms now, the opportunity that's arisen from the rise of remote work has been absolutely massive. And when we talk about things like the informal tone of voice and that level of authenticity that we strike for, I think the Unily external voice is very authentic to how we behave internally and kind of reflects us, our culture. And I think internal comms has really been through a great period of change, and I think that kind of more authentic tone of voice is humanizing and is important, and I think helps a lot of messages, whether they be good or bad, land in a slightly better way. If you're delivering bad news, I'd probably prefer to hear it from a person than from a robot, right? Maybe. Maybe. Depends how cool the robot is, I guess. But, that's the thing. Like, it's that authentic, human element to internal communications, which I think is really important, especially when we're going through really trying times. So, yes, in answer, I do think that the informal tone of voice is a powerful thing.
Yeah, and the thing I want to say, another thing that's a hallmark of our external marketing is we put a face to our external marketing a lot. Like, we talk about our employees and we talk about what we try to showcase them and put them forward. So our webinars, our blogs, we try to have our employees contribute to that. I'm sure Casey would love us to do more. But I do think there's some truth to that. And Kaz, you've been an external facing, even though your job is, you're not a marketing person in the traditional sense, you're product marketing. Your job is really to think about, like Matt, how we can, enhance the product, change it, modify it, upgrade it, add to it so that customers continue to get value from it. That's not external marketing. And yet you're all over our social media. Like
a plague.
I didn't want to say it, but if you're going to say it. No, I mean, what about that? Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, do you know what? It was something that I think I've evolved a lot on over time. I think when I started at Unily, it wasn't something that came naturally, and it's actually not something I've done before, so it's not something I'm experienced in. But I think that's kind of the point, is that there is that trend of employee advocacy, and you're right, like us on this podcast, we come from different teams, different perspectives, and I think that's something that is really powerful, because I think this is actually a trend in internal and external, I think, but compared to all those trends, one thing we're seeing at the moment is, we spoke about the authentic voice and being relatable, and that links to that related to employees, because if I'm looking to, if I'm looking to, sorry, Caitlin, earlier you said that you looked at the marketing content and that was something that roped you in. I think I'm guilty of the same thing. So what I'm looking for really is authenticity and kind of candid insights. And when you get this kind of polished frame, I guess there's value in that because it looks polished, but actually the deeper value is when you get insights from the people that make up that business. So the people that are, whether they're working on the product, whether they're actively working with clients, being able to kind of dip into the different insights that span the company is, I would say, more valuable than just the shine or the kind of polish that you get with typical external communications. So that employee advocacy trend is something, it is interesting because it is fairly new, and I'd say it's rising. And we've had some of those conversations internally, is how can employees have the voice to share stuff externally, and how is that presented?
Yeah, Kate and I occasionally talk about this too, like, because there's a wrong way to do employee advocacy, like where it just falls flat on its face. And I think a lot of it has to do with the voice that you're putting out there. I mean, Kate, you're nodding and smiling. Go ahead, say whatever's on your mind.
We're joking on the side about something else.
That's right. We have a side conversation going, and It's literally like being back in school and passing notes and giggling.
It is, and do you know, I always got in trouble. The teacher is at the front
of the class.
Teachers always said to my parents in conferences, like, Caitlin's a great student, but like she distracts others. Like she knows what she's doing.
She's extremely distracted.
Sorry about that. And I'm doing that on the side. You know what, actually, when you were talking about the importance of delivering bad news too, I won't say it because it's internal information, like what it was, but like yesterday we were in a meeting and we were hearing some information that like wasn't great news, but the reason and it's internal comms, right? The reason I received it well and actually came out of that positive was because our leadership team was being transparent with us about something. And I appreciated that because they were committing to like living the values that we committed to. So there is a way to, and because it was important information to share, they did it, in a presentation on a call versus just publishing a news story about it with some stats. So like that was the way to do something correct, where then employees appreciate the transparency, that you are communicating something, even if it's not always positive all the time.
Yes.
And that it's being delivered in a correct, meaningful way. So that just popped into my mind. And then I also forgot I forgot what you asked me originally.
The reason Caitlin is so distracted is because Casey's dog, Lenny, in the background, who you've probably seen at this point, is while we're recording. And it's making everyone very uncomfortable.
He's really embarrassed now.
He is. Look at him. He's like, oh god.
He's like, I'll show myself out.
Poor Lenny. Have a treat. That might help.
You know what, Lenny? Thank you for taking one for the team.
It's a dire protest to get
Lenny.
That's what it is.
Lenny saved us.
There you go. Oh
my gosh.
You try and control yourself back there.
Yes, please do.
Very off-putting.
But just getting back to the topic, as Lenny continues to, bombard poor Casey in that room. So, Matt, what are some of the things customers are asking for, or you're discovering in your research, that people want to see to help them kind of, deliver messages in this omni-channel way to meet people appropriately, to make this stuff more effective? Because I think we've established the voice is critical. It's the delivery mechanism matters too. What are some of the things they're asking for? And then I may go to Caitlin and Kaz and say, who do you think some of our best customers are? By name or pseudonymized.
Just straight up, who's the best?
Who's the best? Who's we're number one, right? No, well, you don't have to, but who's
it's like not having a favorite child, but like we all really have.
But we all have a favorite child, of course. That's
Unily
why you only
does
have
not
one.
endorse this messaging. I'm going to save us all.
But Matt, what are? Oh God, this is going to get really awkward if I have another child. What are people asking for to help them do this sort of stuff, or what do you think enables them to do this sort of stuff from actually now a feature perspective? What are some of the things?
Well, again, we're talking today about what we can learn from consumer grade communication, and how we bring that into the organization, and what internal comms can do to achieve similar levels of reach and effectiveness and engagement, really kind of take any key learnings from that. And I think the thing that we've always seen from teams like Casey's and other comms teams, outward comms teams, is a great use of different digital formats. So we're all here on a podcast right now, but Casey's team have been blogging for a long time. They actually vary across short and long form content. So we do white papers and guides and case studies, which are all longer reads. They write short short blogs. They also do video content. They host live webinars. And so they're really, I think, and that from a marketing perspective, I think has been, somewhat of a standard for a long time, especially the digital aspect of it. And I think with the rise of remote working and the way that the pandemic has impacted organizations and everyone being naturally separated, the rise of digital for internal communications and relying on that, as a channel to reach your people has really obviously increased significantly. But the number of channels have increased significantly as well. So it's not just about it being digital, but all the various types of digital channels that are at play. So when we look at our customer base and we talk about phrases like go to where they are, I really believe it. I really believe it's a critical element in internal communications. So we look to deliver communications tools, and I think organizations should be looking for communication tools that are not siloed within the single tool or solution that they purchase or build, but can touch across the multiple different channels that people interact with on a day-to-day basis. You never know when your potential target audience are going to have that 1-2 minutes in their day. And if you're not where they are, then you're not going to get the engagement, you're not going to deliver the critical messages that you really need to or want to. So, it's not just about having an intranet to deliver internal comms articles, but it's, this team works this department always works in Microsoft Teams for 90% of their day. And over here, we've got these guys, they're always in Slack, that's where they're doing loads of work. And these guys are always using Salesforce Chatter. And it's about how do I make sure that message lands in all those different places. Even if the content doesn't live there, I can reach my audience there. And I think, that's a key learning that as internal communicators we can take from marketing, because I think they've been very good at syndicating one blog or one piece of content across social media, across all these different channels, and really have embraced the model of go to where they are. And internal comms now, I think, especially with remote work, are really starting to seize that opportunity. People they're probably getting the highest engagement with their comms ever, and I think that's such a powerful opportunity for internal communicators to lead internal discourse about change, culture, and a broad range of other topics.
That's brilliant, because I think Matt just confirmed Salesforce Chatter integration coming to the platform. That's what I took from that. Matt, you're on the hook for it. So
Q2. You heard it here first.
I'll see you guys later. I'm never coming back.
Exclusive news.
Cut the message.
Brilliant. So, okay, just quickly, what are some great customer examples of either customers or strategies to do the omni-channel well that come to mind? Because I want some concrete stuff here. What have we seen? And again, if you need to change their name, so for example, if Unily, a fictitious company, was doing something very well, please say so. But don't quote.
I think I can comfortably name a couple clients who would be who are like pretty vocal on our behalf as it is. Like I think when I think about Micron, who has a super buttoned up comms strategy, and I have a friend actually who works on executive communications internally, and it mirrors closely. I think they're internal, external stuff too, but Micron Celanese does a really great job. And I think two of the things that they have in common are that they have clearly documented content strategies. And I think our customers sometimes who struggle with their content management and maybe engagement metrics are those that don't have a clearly defined and published and easy to access governance strategy and tone of voice too. Like, what is our tone of voice? So I know like Micron has, and a lot of I've noticed with our large enterprise clients do this too. They have very, very strict criteria of what makes a good homepage piece of content, because everybody thinks their content's important. And in fact, another client, like large retail, I won't name them since we don't have permission, but had also a strict homepage. Like, everybody wants to get promoted to home, but like, what's the criteria for that? Because everybody like nobody wants to be told they have an ugly baby. So, but like some people have an ugly baby. So, just kidding.
Strike that from the
all
record.
babies are don't just delete. Don't include that. That's me.
Yeah, no. I'll let you guys
but
jump in again. But you know what?
Yeah.
The controversy of stuff on the homepage is something that's as old as time, as old as print. You know, I want my thing, and it's highly political. And I think guidelines go a long way towards, you know, effectively focusing that controversy into something that's more productive. That's a really good point. Yeah.
It's guidelines and it's audits too. And I mentioned this was a thing I teased everyone about right before, which isn't that like one of my colleagues I met with this week is doing a whole content strategy session as with his accounts that he works with on the customer success side. And while that's not technically part of our customer success like program, you know, he wants to include that for his clients because it's important to them. And one of the things that he's sharing with them is an audit strategy too, which is so important. Like we talk about that a lot when we're talking to clients who are migrating off other platforms. What do we decide to pick and what do we leave behind when we're moving our house? But like you should be regularly auditing your content to do a check on yourself. Are we staying on message? Is the tone right? Who's owning what? What are the engagement metrics? What needs to get retired? You know, so I think that's also equally important and something that clients who have a good strategy do.
Yeah, Casey, what are examples that you like?
Well,
even though you're on the external facing side, you get to work with our customers probably as much as those of us who have been on the consulting side. So
yeah, and I kind of see the kind of polished, finished effect usually, which is good. Well, I did a little bit of background research when I found out this morning that I was appearing on this podcast.
so 5 whole minutes of research.
So
excellent.
one of us
Excellent.
did 5 minutes in, yeah.
Excellent.
And I spoke to somebody else that works on the comms team that works on a lot of our client awards, and because she works on a lot of awards, she has a lot of good stories about really
Shout out Nicole.
Things. Shout out Nicole, definitely. So yeah, she sees a lot of kind of the most interesting things that our clients are doing, the most innovative things, because those are the things we want to put in for awards. And she was talking to me about one of our clients, and they have a really interesting internal comms approach, because, well, the things I think that are most interesting about it is that it's always very fresh, so they're always trying out new kind of interesting techniques, and I think that freshness is a brilliant way to engage people. If it's something that you haven't seen before, you're automatically interested in what it is. And the other thing that they do really well is understanding their audience. They do a lot of listening, finding out what their audience want from internal comms, and then responding to that. So a couple of examples of things that I thought were really interesting that they'd done. So they have an initiative called Love's Ladder, which is a content series. And the idea is that it shows, it spotlights different employees around the business that have risen from frontline levels, so working kind of in the truck stops on like a kind of from a retail capacity, and then have moved up within the business. So they have a series of articles showing that, and I think that serves a really nice cultural purpose. You start to put a face to the employees around the company, which is a great thing, but also you can show that progression, which I think for them and for a lot of retail businesses, staff turnover is a big thing, and that can be costly. So what Loves have done with this series is tried to confront that a little bit and show that actually you can progress from these positions right up to higher senior leader kind of corporate positions, and that inspires people, right? So that serves a really good cultural purpose. On top of that, they then have a custom search which is called Ask Loves. And they, so employees can type in anything from benefits to, you know, what benefits have I got access to, what, how do I check my holiday allowance, whatever. They can type that in and then they'll get targeted responses. And that feature came directly off of the back of feedback from their audience to say, I'm finding it difficult to find this information. So they went away, they developed this search function that allows them to do that. And in doing that, they're showing their employees, we're listening, we're responding, and now you can be more productive as well. So that was a really interesting one. And the final one for Loves, because I think this one's really nice, is they've put a real focus on employee recognition, which is, I think, something that a lot of internal comms team, a lot of businesses are doing at the moment. As we become more dispersed, it gets harder to recognize employees' kind of day-to-day achievements. You know, you can't give a little high five, you can't shout over the desk, oh, nice one, mate, you've done a really good job on that. So we have to make more of a concerted effort to recognize employees now, and Loves have done a great job of this because they have got quite creative with the type of badges that you can award through their platform. So they've created some custom badges. I'm going to read out some of them here. So they've got Random Acts of Love. So that one is,
Random Acts of Love. That's a good one.
It's nice.
Yeah.
So that's obviously just, you know, when you've helped out a colleague or you've done something special, you know, that's kind of a nice cultural one, celebrating, you know, people that have done little acts of kindness. Wow moments. So those are there for anybody that's really demonstrated the values of the company and kind of gone above and beyond. Again, that kind of reinforces in people's mind that is something that will be recognized and appreciated. Culture champions, again, people that have really, you know, held true to the values of the company or done something to really drive culture. And then my favorite of them all is Top Banana. And Top Banana is awarded once a year. So there's limited supply, which obviously makes it more special. And once a year, a Top Banana badge goes to one person in the company that's, you know, performed really well and in whatever it might be, done something really outstanding. And that will then sit on their profile for the rest of the time they're at the company. So, and the other interesting thing they've done to really spotlight that recognition is they've created a custom feed that's on the homepage, and it just populates with the latest badges that have been awarded. So it puts that recognition piece front and center when people come on the homepage. They're seeing people around the business are being recognized. This is what they're being recognized for, and that's the culture and values that I want to emulate in my role. So I think they've done a great job.
I didn't believe you when you said you had done some research. That was impressive. That was
5 minutes before the call. That was
Love's Travel Stops and Country Store should be thanking you for all of that, Casey.
And
that
case study
impressive.
coming out soon. Nicole's working on it right now.
Oh, shameless
watch this
plug.
space.
Shameless plug.
Much better than
she's
my
in
research.
marketing after all.
Matt, you had one. What was it?
So actually, the interesting thing is that my one is actually the same brand that I was talking about before in travel and tourism. And I think what I really like about their approach to internal communications is they really do embrace both the need to take their communications directly to where their users are, but they also have a lot of frontline workers who, you know, operate in hard to reach areas, and they're embracing a true multi-channel comms strategy with content which is really tailored to the needs of their people, in as much as we talked about people being time poor, and that we also there's this expectation sometimes that you're going to read those internal comms articles during your working day, and so they make sure that all their reads are short, to the point, and really tailored to the audience reading them. They focus on cutting through the noise and delivering feeds of information which are tailored to the individual based upon the role they have around the business. You know, they're trying to cover, you know, not just modern digital comms channels or what we'd consider more modern digital comms channels like an employee experience platform or intranet as the home of internal comms, but they're not afraid to reach people by email, for example. I know over years we talked about, you know, email as this like kind of almost like a dirty word. It's like, you know, or, you know, email so traditional, so old school, but actually everyone's still using it, right? I
Yeah.
use it every day to communicate with my peers, with other people in my team, so on and so forth. So, they're really embracing all the different channels that they know their audience is using, and they monitor that. They kind of check that engagement and that kind of click-through rate from all their different channels, so they can prove the efficacy of what they're doing. They're really focused on making sure that, and it's not to prove numbers for themselves, but to prove that they're doing their job. They're getting people the information they need, and that's like a really cool story, I think.
Yeah, it is. Kaz, what about you? What about, and I love putting Kaz on the spot because he immediately smiles and goes, I'm going to kill Paul after this. What's an example that comes to mind of someone maybe doing it right?
So we've heard a lot about some really cool out there examples, but one company that I think nails the kind of foundation right is Shell. And obviously a big name like Shell, you think, okay, well, loads of employees, global company, and I think they really, as Matt was saying with his example, what they do really well is nail down their targeting. So they invest heavily on understanding the segments of their organization, so the regions down to the departments, the roles, and they create specific target audiences. I guess that's quite common in more external communications as well, right? So you target based on industry, or you target based on like role. So they, similar to external comms, they've invested heavily in defining all their targeting groups, their segments of employees, to make sure that the right communications get to the right people. And they do it through various different ways, but my favorite way they do it is through their intranet. And they have this kind of news feed page, and it's designed a little bit like BBC. I know it's more of a British news reference, but I quite like the BBC.
we watch BBC. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good.
It's
to
a
hear,
reputable news source for us in
exactly.
America.
Yeah. Depending on so yeah. I won't say anything further. But what BBC do well is that they clearly label the news you're consuming. So, this is your local news, this is your world news, this is your kind of personalized news, and Shell kind of mirror that a little bit. It's very transparent to say, this is your targeted news. So that news I'm consuming there is based on my particular role or department or location. Beneath that, they've got their, this is your corporate news. And it's great from an employee perspective because it's like, oh, I know exactly what I'm consuming now. It's transparent about what I'm consuming, but it gives them the option to say, okay, here's different types of news. And I quite like that because it is like a proper news hub, almost like an external news website. And that's what I like about it. It's quite transparent with the news you're consuming. And I think because they've invested so heavily in defining their targeting segments, it means that they can create the right news, push them to the right people in the right place, and that actually in amongst that you get like a nice shiny news hub as well. So that's the example that comes to mind. So you can have loads of cool flashy stuff, but the foundation of your news as well and how you get that news out is super important, which I think Shell do amazingly well.
My favorite thing about Shell, I was in Las Vegas with David, who was the lead over there and the sponsor internally there, and he talked about how speaking to the notion of a voice, they wanted to do more short, snappy videos. They wanted to do, and I think their rule of thumb was if it goes over 2 minutes, you got to throw it out. And they were doing this with leadership, and he said he drove home the point. We got a couple of like used iPhones, and we used those for video, and it was good enough. And it was good enough because, the quality's good enough, but also we could do production a lot quicker and get it out faster. And then it became less about how pretty something is and more about, wow, I'm getting these things so frequently, and it's informing me, and it's engaging, and it doesn't eat up tons of my time. I want more of that. So that was the lesson from Shell. That's when the rich media thing really hit me, because I was one who's like, oh boy, everyone talks about it, but how are they going to do it internally? And when David shared that story, I went, oh, that's how you do it. So there you go. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to those of you who joined us out in the universe. We're really grateful, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Oh, you're wearing your Unite 19 top, Paul.
I know. Oh, I meant to make a joke about that, and I forgot.
There you go.
Lenny? Oh, good boy. Good boy.
That's a bit high.
No, mine's a bit low. Mine's a bit lower.
I am the Murray model of banana.